You've heard all the buzz lately about the negative impacts of alcohol, especially on women and its correlation to certain kinds of cancers. And at this time in our lives, our midlife journey, our midlife prime, this is when we want to be getting healthier, not hungover. But if you're like me, I'm going to be honest, I love my wine. I know there's a huge movement of non-alcoholic drinks, and that's great. And I think it's amazing to see such force behind the movement for everyone to like really invest in their own health and wellness. But I am still a wine lover at heart, and I do have an addictive personality. I'm one of those people that gets suckered in to almost anything. So, while I say I like wine, wine is the only thing I drink. So to remove it from my entire lifestyle is really hard for me to get my head around. Although, as you're going to hear in this upcoming episode, I have greatly reduced my wine intake. It's Saturday nights only these days. But will I get rid of it altogether? I'm not really sure. I'm not a fan of the non-alcoholic wines. I've tried a few. I'm just not a huge fan. But that's just me. I'm a wine snob. But also, I'm not really looking to replace the flavor of my wine. I'm looking to replace the habit. And so I'm having a really good discussion in this episode with Laura Bradburn, who is a holistic health consultant, and she's the founder of Branch Out Wellness. Um, she focuses on psilocybin education and support. And in this episode, Laura and I are talking about the benefits of microdosing, which you probably heard a lot more about lately, but in particular, one strain, one option that is going to give you that sort of two glass of wine feel without the toxins, without the wine or cocktails, without the hangover, and with a good night's sleep. So tune in and have a listen to Laura Bradburn from Branch Out Wellness. Laura, this is the first podcast in my next season of the She 2.0 in Conversation. I've lost track of how many seasons I've been in, what episodes I'm on. The brain fog is real. I'm just like a highly disorganized person. But you and I met a few months ago, and we've been having some very honest and very poignant conversations, I think, around like alcohol. And I first met you, obviously, I reached out to you at Branch Out Wellness when I was really exploring more about psilocybin and psychedelics for mental health, PTSD, and all the things.
Yep.
But then in our conversation, you really brought up a point for me about alcohol. And I want
hmm
to talk about drinking, alcohol, the ups, the downs. And then later on in this episode, you're going to come up with a wonderful, brilliant solution. So
Sure.
that's a teaser. So let's start off by, I'll just give you a little background about me and wine. So I am a wine snob, which is a good and bad thing. The good part is that I only drink like wines that I love that are heavy and give me really good mouthfeel.
Mhm.
Makes it really hard for us to go out to certain restaurants or anything because if I don't like the wine, we are leaving.
Yeah.
The bad, like that's the bad part for my husband, I would say. But the good part is if I don't find a wine I like, I just won't drink wine. So that's
Yeah.
always been my little, gauge for moderation. However, I will try really damn hard to find something I like.
Yeah.
That being said, aside from like the wine snobbiness, I have been really thinking about my relationship with wine, as many women have, and I know men are too, but like women, we know that it impacts us in a very negative way. We're hearing more and more about links to cancer, certain kinds of cancer. They're going to start, putting warning labels on alcohol, which they probably should. I mean, we do with cigarettes. Not that you need to like have a warning label to tell you drinking too much is bad, but we'll go with it. Um, but I thought it was interesting when you and I had a conversation a while ago talking about just how that wine habit starts. And I'm guessing, and how it plays out in a day-to-day situation for most women. So for me, it's like cooking dinner. It's my reward at the end of the day. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a glass of wine at 6 o'clock. It's gonna be so rewarding. Um, and then I try and cut it out of my schedule and everything changes.
Right.
Would you say you're having a similar, like, or had a similar kind of situation?
For sure. Um, you brought up a lot of really good relatable stuff there because it's not only something that I definitely relate to, but I know a lot of women relate to, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, I think it's so easily woven into the societal norms and has our entire lives. So even your mentioning of, not that you need a black label to put on wine to know you shouldn't drink it or alcohol, sorry. In some ways, you kind of do sometimes need that refresher, like, oh yeah, this isn't really good for us because again, societally, alcohol is just part of lives. It's part of everything we do. It's part of socialization, it's part of vacationing, it's part of, every major event in our lives. It's again, not everyone, but I'd say majority, of things. So we can fall into these habits very easily. Like it's not a hard thing, and it's to me it's actually when I kind of retrospectively look back at it and how it's not a hard thing, and it's that people fall into, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just woven into the fabric of our lives.
It's kind of like the social glue and the social lubricant, right? For those of us, not me, I'm an extrovert mostly, but I don't really get shy in situations. But I love having a drink with people. It's how I feel like it's the unspoken way that we connect. But
Right.
for people who are shy, who maybe don't like crowds or going to a work event or a party with their spouse or alone, like some people want those first couple of drinks to loosen up before they
Mhm.
get there, or once they get there to really feel like they can, like, blend in with the fabric of the party.
Right. Yep. And again, that's really common, right? Like that's for me. I know that was a thing for me. Like I am more of an introvert, I'd say. Like I don't once I'm in the social situation, I'm good. But getting me there is like, ugh,
Okay.
yeah, not it's kind of pulling teeth for me a lot of the times. And then again, once I get there, I'm like, I'm great. Um, but yes, knowing that, you can get there and you can have a glass of wine or a glass of bubbly or, have a beer and you're like, okay, like, because you feel you have that level of comfort, there's like a commonality between everyone. There's something that's almost an icebreaker. It's,
Yeah.
it's there, right?
So
Where,
what would you do if like someone said, okay, we're going to this party and no one's drinking?
right.
What would happen there?
And I think in the past,
Yep.
I'm not saying that even right now that I wouldn't be like, oof, this
What's the
sucks.
evil part though? Because I already know what it is for me.
Yeah, I'm like, ugh, I don't like I'd still like to go have a glass of wine or something, but in the past, I'd sincerely consider not going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So me too. And I'm just
Mhm.
gonna be blatantly honest about it.
Yep.
Um, except for a few people in my, like, I guess in my community, and I mean community of friends, like whether it be Toronto, Burlington, wherever. Um, there's very few women I know who don't drink, and the ones that I do have maybe never drank, and like it just doesn't occur to them. Like we can sit and chat, and like there's no elephant in the room, so to speak. But when people go out of their way to make it a dry thing, I feel like there's I'm almost it's all I can think about.
Mhm.
Like if I go to a party and half the people aren't drinking, it doesn't really occur to me. But if it's like flat out an agenda, we're gonna make this dry,
Right.
all of a sudden it's all I can think about. It's like that scarcity mindset, right?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, and like dry January. I've never
Mhm.
done it. Like my husband and I just for no reason at all stopped drinking a couple of weeks ago during the week. We were like, you know what? I feel great during the week. I have ADHD, and I found when I stopped drinking during the week, like we only have wine like one night a week now, for now, but um my clarity is gone. Like my clarity is there. My
Right.
fog is like greatly diminished. I have
Mhm.
more energy, of course, during the day. I'm a little pissed off though because I have gained a pound and a half, and that's
Right.
not fair. I don't think that's fair at all because I haven't increased my calorie intake to accommodate for wine. Like I don't like have a chocolate bar at night now because I'm not having wine. So I
Right.
feel like I've been grossly ripped off there.
Yeah.
Um, my sleep is better. It took a
Yep.
while, but my sleep is better. But I find like, okay, so I have this issue, like I think about a reformed non-smoker.
Mhm.
If that's the right term, someone who quits smoking and all of a sudden they're an evangelist about the benefits of not smoking.
Right.
That's great. I'm glad that you quit smoking. It's way better for your body and your brain and your mind. You're going to live longer and all the things. You do you.
Mhm.
But when people like force that upon other people, then all of a sudden I feel judged. And so when we call something like a dry event or whatever, I feel like somehow there's like a judgment there. And that's where I'm like, oh, a dry party. I feel like we're all just going to talk about why we're not drinking. And then we're all going to be thinking about having a glass of wine.
Right.
It can
Right.
be a struggle to take wine out of the social equation.
For sure. And I think that's where, again, it's because it's a habit. It's not, and don't get me wrong, we're speaking about, those who are, having these awkward feelings towards um not having a glass of wine or things like there's a borderline between stopping drinking because you have an addiction, right? And it's impacting your life in terribly negative ways. And right, like that's not who, I think both and you and I are kind of referring to in this
Yeah,
scenario, right?
not in
There
this.
is a difference between someone who's now a non-drinker because they were formerly an
Yeah,
addict, right? And those people, if that's the case for anyone, then yes, then you need to contact your primary care physician and go through the right steps of treatment. But when we're speaking about the people who are feeling the same, like you're like, I just want to feel better, or I just want to, it's really just, I feel, based a lot on breaking habit. It's the
yeah,
just woven into the social things, and habits are really hard to break no matter what that habit is. It's hard to make a new habit, it's hard to break an old habit. And sometimes again, you need a little helping hand in forming new habits. And for me, that's where psilocybin came in to my life. And it was building into new habits to help reinforce the new habits that I was making. So it was just about making different choices and thinking about things differently. So going into those types of situations was not so daunting. I think that's the right word I'm looking for.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah. I was recently away with some girlfriends and someone brought up a bottle of wine, alcohol-free wine. I forget the name of the wine, but it said not wine on the
Mhm.
bottle, which we instantly after a sip replaced with not fun,
No,
not good.
not
It was
good.
god awful swill. It
Right,
wasn't even passable as grape juice and it was $30 plus shipping.
right.
So I know there are, like I like Nosecco. I know there are some good ones out there,
Mhm,
but right now I would say the majority that I've tried are a no-go.
right,
Um, and the thing that's interesting about that to me is if I'm not gonna drink wine, I'm not going to drink something that tries to be wine. Like it'll just make me want wine. And like if I'm actually doing it because I'm trying to break a relationship with wine, I don't
right,
want to substitute it with something that is supposed to taste or have the mouth feel like wine, but is an alcoholic. Like I want to disassociate from wine at certain times in my schedule. So I would rather have like a lemon San Pellegrino, or a cherry bubbly, like just something that tastes good. It's not supposed to be wine. It's not even pretending. You know,
right,
I feel like that's by trying to replace something with something that isn't wine but is pretending to be wine is just kind of furthering that mindset that you need that wine. And maybe that could be like, I'm just saying wine because that's all I really know. It could be like a alcohol-free um, Moscow Mule or something, but I'd rather just completely ditch it and go for something completely different to break that habit.
right. Yeah, and I think and I totally see that side of it for sure.
Mm.
And then I find there's kind of the opposite side of having that same satiation or that same feeling. Like,
Yeah.
so if it was like a non-alcoholic beer, like if you really want a beer, there's not a lot of substitutes that you're like, "Ah," like if I want a beer, you want a beer, on
Yeah.
like a hot summer day and you want that crisp, cold beer.
Yes.
I don't know if there's a lot of things that would give me that same feeling, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? So, that's where I do find for some, those non-alcoholic options do work really well.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's really a personal thing, right? Like some people
Yeah.
will find that, again, that satiation or that, substitution elsewhere,
Yeah.
and some people, that just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for me, if I was trying to give up, I don't know, like, I compare it to, like, milk chocolate and dark chocolate, right? Like, if I was trying not to eat dark chocolate and I was like, "Okay, I'll try a milk cho," like, that's not it's not same. It's not
No.
gonna it's not gonna work for
No.
me. All I'm gonna want is gonna make me want the dark chocolate more.
Yeah, I'm the reverse. If I go dark, like dark is what I eat because I've been told it's healthier. I would prefer the milk chocolate. But yeah,
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
not the same.
See?
But yeah, like for me, I feel like I need like alcoholism for dummies because like a couple of years ago, I sat on the back porch, or back deck, it was like smoking hot. Red wine in the summer, warm, like is not good. So even if you chill it, it's just like a little too heavy. So I thought, because I have a lot of friends who drink cocktails, that I would get ginger beer. And I drank two of them while my husband was barbecuing, and I was like, I don't get it. I do not get this ginger beer thing. Like, I've had two, I'm full, it might be a little gassy now, and I actually don't have a buzz. And he was like, there's no alcohol in ginger beer. I'm like, well, then why the hell are they calling it beer? Root beer.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you had to add the alcohol to
You
it. So
do. Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
like ingested a whole bunch of empty calories in my
And just sugar. So much sugar.
sugar, no fun.
Yeah.
A lot of bloating. But yeah, I think like for us, we didn't do it because like we didn't intentionally do it. Like, we come as a package. So if one of us decides not to have a cocktail, the other one's not having a cocktail.
Mhm.
But if like on a summer night, if we say, yeah, we're not going to do anything tonight, and I hear him crack open the beer,
Mhm.
like I hear the sound from like I can tell you like 12 kilometers away. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm having a glass of wine. Permission to have wine.
Permission.
So
Permission granted. Yep.
permission granted. But I think the problem is like if I think about my own lifestyle in the summer, it's very, very social in my community. I have a front porch that everyone hangs out on, and it's fun,
Mhm.
and I love it. But it's like sort of this transient group. Some people will come over, then they'll leave, and someone else will come by, and like it's super fun. But you're always pouring a glass of wine because
Yeah.
people come over with a glass in their hand, and it's the first thing you think was, I'm gonna go get a glass of wine. So by the end of the summer, you are a verified alcoholic, and then you're like, well, I'm gonna like lay off in the fall, but Christmas is coming and parties are coming, and then it's dry Jan, and then you've earned it. Well, I mean, we don't do dry January, but you feel like, I'm gonna lay low in January. February's coming up, Family Day, like Valentine's Day. There's always a reason.
There's always a reason.
Always, I can
Always.
sniff a reason out a mile away. But
Right.
I think we did this to see, I think we were genuinely concerned. Like, can we not drink? Like,
Mhm.
are we addicted to alcohol? And I would say safely, yeah, we are. Like, we're not drinking during the week, and it hasn't been a problem because I feel like, because I know I will have a glass of wine again.
Mhm.
But if you said to me, no more wine for you ever, it would be on my mind all the time. I don't think I could do it.
Right, and I
I
do
don't
think
think I
that's
could.
the all or nothing mentality. That's I struggle with that because I do find a lot of women who are giving up alcohol, it's not because A, they don't end up very successful at it for very long, or, these stints of dry January or things like this when you're putting kind of these restrictions on yourself and, like, don't do it. And if you do, then it's all for nothing now.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, or it's the same for me as the success rate of trying to cut anything out in your life for that you enjoy for a long time. It'd be, being a meat eater and never eating meat again, but you
Mhm.
enjoy it, like everything in moderation is a real thing, right? And I think it can be alcohol still can be part of someone's life. It's just reassociating how it is in your life and just building new habits. So it's the way we look at it. And like I said, for me, you mentioned when you were like cooking dinner, pour a glass of wine, right? And that's I remember in the past, just because it was habit. I would either come home or be home because I was home with the kids. And that dinner time hit, and I was like, I can have a glass of wine now, right? So I'd pour a glass of wine while I was cooking dinner. And then I'd sit down for dinner. I was like, well, I have wine with dinner. Of course, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Let's have a glass of wine with dinner. And then we get the kids off and up to bed. I was like, well, now I can have a glass of wine. I can actually enjoy a glass of wine because now the kids are in bed. And I was like, well, now it's Tuesday and I've had a bottle of wine,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm like, oh, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like I was seeking out
Oh,
this. I wasn't seeking out a buzz even. I wasn't really looking for that. It just was a habit of what I did, and then
yeah.
Wednesday would be the same and Thursday would be the same. And it might not be a whole bottle every night, but it was a couple drinks every night for no real purpose,
Yeah.
right? Just
Yeah.
habit. So I just started to look at how can I just change some of those habits. So I'm not saying I'm not going to have a glass of wine every night. I'm just saying I'm not going to have my first glass of wine until after dinner.
Yeah. And see if you even want it then.
And then exactly, and half the time I get there, I was like, I don't even want this. And,
Yeah.
I'll do things like, if it kind of the mood strikes, again, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna have a glass of wine. I'm just gonna say, again, I'll wait until after dinner, but until then, I'll get my wine glass, but I'll put like a sparkling water that I love in it.
Yeah.
I'm a big glassware snob, like, I love a good glass, so I find, using my fancier glasses or the glass that I will drink the wine like, it makes it a little bit more it's like using, like, your fun mug, like, you have your fun mugs and stuff that you want your coffee or tea in the morning. Same kind of idea for me, and I just I put my sparkling water or ginger beer or whatever it is in in it, um, and yeah, sometimes, yeah, I do end up having that glass of wine later, and then sometimes I just don't because that initial habit is broken and then that kind of the cravings that are associated with it, I guess, are gone by that point. So it's
Yeah.
started to really just slowly and again just changed the way I thought about it. Same with drinking, like we're same. Like I have a very social neighborhood. We have a trailer at a campground, so we're there most of the summer. So no matter what time of day it is, someone's walking by with a drink, and
Yeah.
'cause and same, it can get really overwhelming, so I do love a non-alcoholic beer, right? So I'm like, I'll just do and it might not be every drink, but maybe every other,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or every third, then maybe I throw a beer in there and it's fine if that's what I want, right? But
Yeah.
having those options available and kind of being locked and loaded and just making those little habit choices, definitely made a huge impact for me, and, I feel that I can still very much do enjoy having a drink in those social situations. I don't want to deprive myself of that, right? Like I do
Yeah.
want to still be able to enjoy. And I know that if I gave myself the hard, I'm not drinking anymore thing, it would not likely be very successful. But
Yeah. But
because I
that
also don't want it. I thoroughly I enjoy I'm the same with you. I enjoy wine. Like I
yeah.
really enjoy it. I enjoy champagne at not even special occasions. I think we should drink it whenever you want because life should be
No,
celebrated.
it's
It's
champagne.
delightful. But yeah, I enjoy those moments. I do. It's just cutting out the rest of the things. So those moments really that's what it's for, right? If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think about too, like there are risks to drinking, of course. We know this. We've known this forever, but now we
Mhm.
know it more. But then again, like I'm not going to be hard on anyone who drinks because I live in downtown Toronto. I mean, I'm like sucking on exhaust all day long. I mean, if I want to enjoy a glass of wine, what's, the risk benefit um there, but I agree. Like if you take something away, it's kind of like dieting. If you say, you're gonna go like 1 month and you're gonna do this, you're not gonna eat any sugar or anything, and then you screw up and maybe you have like a cookie or whatever, then you just go, well, back to square one. I had a cookie, like it's all over. But really, we
Yeah.
should be saying, no, no, just like, oh well, little blip,
Right, and you just
keep
pick back
moving.
up where you left off,
Yeah,
right? Like,
keep
same with
going. So,
exercise or anything else. If you start a good workout routine and same thing, people get into a fitness and they're like, "I went 4 days this week, amazing," but then they don't go for 4 days. They're like, "Well, those
yeah,
workouts were all for naught, so why
yeah,
even bother?" When
yeah,
nope, just pick up where you left off and keep going, and it's the consistency behind it, right?
yeah,
And to your point as well of kind of risk reward, um, that's also something great to put because yes, there's balance and there is risk reward in everything. So yes, there's 100%. the correlation of alcohol and cancers. There's no denying that it's bad for us, but
Yeah.
there's also no denying that, red food dyes are very bad for us. There's no denying that
Processed sugar.
processed sugar is very bad for us. There's, anything from artificial scents and things in our house, and how many people are throwing extra dryer sheets and bounce stuff in, which is also linked to some pretty serious health concerns, right? So everything we do and choose is a risk reward.
Yeah.
So I feel like alcohol fits into that as well.
Like seriously, I would clean up my whole house, get rid of all the dyes, the sugars, the processed food, and my dryer sheets
Right.
so I could enjoy a glass of wine.
Right. Right. And I think that's what I've always said or wanted to do, that I want to make sure, you take care of yourself in other ways, right? And so the risks is mid, what's the word I'm looking for? Um
Not mitigated, but
Not
drastically
mitigated.
lowered.
Lowered. Your body is certainly in a much better state to handle the not so good things you're putting in it, if you, again, you put it in a good state to start in.
Yeah. And
Right.
now, just like to be clear, yes, no one should probably drink, but the reality is we don't live in a perfect world. And
Right.
um, I think like for that's an unrealistic expectation. And then I was listening to a podcast with my dad. He's 81 and he stopped drinking. And he does this every couple of years, but this time like he kind of thinks it's for good.
Mhm.
And we were talking listening to this great podcast on CBC about alcohol and our relationship with alcohol. And the guy, the host of the podcast, was like a bigger guy and he was just talking about how much he can consume and how it makes him feel. And as a listener, I'm like, okay, but you're a big dude. I picture you drunk at some party. Like, that's not who I am. I mean, people have rarely ever seen me drunk. I don't know why. Maybe that's a bad thing. I can drink wine to the cows come home and I do not get bombed
Mhm.
unless I'm on an empty stomach. But if I have a cocktail, one cocktail, and I'm
Right.
slurry. So I know, like, stay away. But, I think like the idea is to be realistic about this and say, okay, these warning labels are going to go on is another reminder of what we know. This nonsense of rosé all day and encouraging women, especially during the pandemic, like that it was okay to have mommy's little helper.
Right.
You've earned it. This is your reward. And now we're turning around and saying to the same group of us, oh no, no, it's bad. And like we can't like go from inspiring and encouraging people with all these wine memes and like oven mitts and aprons and all the things that make
Everything. It's on
jokes
everything.
about wine, right? It's like what menopause is now, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And then turning around and stigmatizing it on them
Mhm.
and saying, oh, well, you must have a problem if you're drinking.
Right.
So I think when we make anybody feel like what they're doing is a problem or a weakness, we're not really supporting them. We're just really further stigmatizing and shaming them.
Mhm.
So that brings me to the most exciting part of this conversation, which is, sure we can cut back and sure we can like replace it with our San Pellegrinos or non-alcoholic beers.
Mhm.
But what about just an overall shift in our relationship and where does that start? I would say, I know where we're going with this. I would say
Right.
it starts with changing your mind before you change your habits.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the best part of this conversation?
Sure. Yeah. Just as do you mean psilocybin as a whole or
Yeah.
specific? Sure. Yeah. So
Well, let's start with it as a whole and let's move
okay.
into our new secret weapon.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I use psilocybin microdosing. I'm going to make that kind of clear from the beginning. So that's just it's very small, subperceptual amounts of psilocybin as part
And
of
what do
my
you mean by
health.
that?
Pardon?
Subperceptual? What does that mean?
Subperceptual, meaning it's not you don't feel it. It's not something that would affect your, we're not talking hallucinations, we're not talking anything like that. It's very, very sub perceptual. And I can get more into a little bit into kind of dosing and what that means in just a minute. But um I started my own kind of taking my own health journey really more seriously, I guess you say, probably about 4 years ago. I was, yeah, mid pandemic, small business owner in a very hard hit, probably one of the top three hard hit industries. Two young kids at home, one in kindergarten, trying to teach them on a computer. like,
Oh my
um,
God.
husband has an own business, and essentially my mental health and wellness became just uh, the lowest it's ever been, a complete absolute dumpster fire. Um, and I had to take a really hard look at what my next steps were because I wasn't functioning anymore. I couldn't function as a business owner. I couldn't function as a wife. I couldn't function as a mother. I couldn't function. Um, and I was trying to hide it as best I could, but it wasn't working. I was overcompensating with the like almost toxic positivity. But at home again, not good. So, I had some SSRIs and some like Ativan mainly just to help me through. I originally had them for traveling, which was a different story. But I was speaking to my doctor, and she's like, "I think it's time we discuss something more, something a little more permanent, a little more long term."
Mhm.
And it's just I've always tried to approach my health in a holistic way, and I just wasn't sure, and I was like, I just give me 2 weeks. Like, give me 2 weeks and I'm gonna try to see what I can do. And then serendipitously through my feed on Instagram came Mindful Meds, which is a company that I love. And they are a psilocybin microdosing company located in BC. And I was like, you know what? Like, why not? Like, why not just give this a try? Like, after speaking to them, it took me a couple weeks of just back and forth, and they were really responsive. And I went and, had these conversations, my questions, concerns. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to order it. And I'm not going to tell my husband. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to go ahead and just order this. And within a few days, like the shift in me, thinking my husband's like, what is this? What's
Where's my
happened?
angry wife? Where's my
Yeah.
chaotic
What's going on?
wife?
He's like, you haven't cried today. I was like, I know. Like, was I like super happy back to myself? No, but I didn't cry that day. Nothing else had changed in my life, but I didn't cry. And I was like, okay. There was little things and little shifts that kept happening. And I was like, I think this is for me. And so I kept on keeping on, and I used psilocybin probably for the next 2 years in what they call protocols, and helped in just shifting my mindsets and really supporting the new habits I was making and the new ways I was thinking about myself and the world and my relationship to all different kinds of things. Alcohol was just kind of one of them that happened. And again, I make it very clear, I still very much do drink. I still very much enjoy it. But like I said before, it just changed my habits.
Right.
Um, because feeling good just became more of a priority. Because I enjoyed it so much. And I
Mhm.
realized I probably hadn't felt good, like actually good in 10 years, if not more.
Yeah. And the feeling of feeling good with alcohol, like, and I'm obviously only referring to wine, but like I love, love, love that feeling. Sometimes it's the first glass, sometimes it's second, where you get that warm belly like
Yeah.
buzz, right? And just
Yep.
like, oh my God, someone cryogenically freeze me right here. I
Right.
always want to
Yes.
feel like this. But then a few more sips later, it goes away. You can't get it back. You keep drinking, trying to get it back. You feel like shit.
Right.
You wake up at 2 in the morning. You have the guilt. You know what? Alcohol has turned into an accelerant. You're a mental case. Like
Right.
it's awful, right? And then you wake up feeling like
Exactly.
garbage
Yep.
and then you're nappy. And then the next night you're like, well, might as well do it again. Rinse and repeat.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
feeling good on psilocybin is a different, it's a long game. Like,
Yeah, it's very different, and it's not so much even the psilocybin. So when I was talking about dosages before, so I started on the lowest dose that mindful meds offers. So it's 50 milligrams. So to put that in kind of perspective of what that actually means, a regular dose, we'll call it, of mushrooms, a recreational dose, but someone might take, to
yeah, at a party.
at a party, you might have some very mild visuals depending on the person, of course, but normally, let's say a gram of mushrooms would be it. So that's 1,000 milligrams. I'm taking 50. So when I
Yeah,
say perceptual, it's like a drop in the bucket, right?
right.
It'd be the equivalent of a bottle of wine having a sip. You're not going to feel it.
Uh,
It doesn't mean it's not doing something inside your body, but you're
mhm.
not going to feel it. right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very, very low dose. And again, if that's very low, then you can do like 100, anything kind of under 150, for most people,
Mhm.
um, would be considered subperceptual. And like I said, what it's doing on kind of the back end, and when I was saying about it supporting the new habits, um, again, we can do a whole conversation just on the geek
Yeah,
out side of things, but
we
essentially for
will.
yeah, the basics is really just it's forming new neural pathways. So as you ingest psilocybin, your brain literally starts to create new webs to one another. And when we say it's because you think differently, you physically are actually now able to think differently because you have new neural pathways connecting to one another. And it's not that now once the psilocybin leaves your system, these pathways disconnect. They're there to stay. So it's a great tool to use when you're trying to, like I said, change habits or
Yeah.
build new routines, and why there's such success and it's being used for therapeutic treatments for things like eating disorders, PTSD, major traumas, addiction. It's really incredible.
And
What
ketamine, I think, is the one that they use for alcoholism issues,
Yep,
alcoholism addiction, and so
yep. Yeah,
yeah,
psychedelics are really the research has been there in the past. Unfortunately, it was stopped. um,
yeah.
by the powers that be, and a lot of that research kind of put to the back burner. It's now really resurging again, and it's really coming out of seeing exactly how powerful it can be, and in the in a with the right tools, can really help. So for me, it was really, really life changing. And then after I said I've used it for, pardon me, for about 2 years, and then after that, psilocybin isn't meant to be from a microdosing perspective. It's not. I don't want to say not meant to be, but it's not required to be a lifelong thing. It's to
Yeah.
help you through periods of time to build new habits. And then so now I really just microdosed like intuitively. So, if I have a very busy day coming up, or I really want to focus, or I really want to have that clarity, that kind of mood elevation, that's when I know I'm like, yep, today's a microdosing day for me. Um, and I can, again, just kind of, I don't want to say feel my best because it's not necessarily how I feel. I just definitely feel the most clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I started doing it a few years ago. I think I've told you this story and I might have shared it on the podcast before, but the first time I got a microdose was my friend Irie Selkirk, who runs
Mhm.
Rise Collective. She's the one I did her journey in Jamaica last year, which was incredible.
Right.
And she sent me this microdose, and so my husband and I sent my daughter to my parents' house because we're like, we do not want her to see us going all crazy. Like we could go reefer madness, we don't know. And then we did the microdose. I think we even split it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, which one of us oh crap, we have to go to Shoppers Drug Mart to pick up something. Which one of us is gonna do it? Oh my God. And then we sat there for like a few hours and we're like, nothing is
No,
happening. I'm
no.
like, all right, I'll go to Shoppers, like I'm fine. And then at the end of the day, and we did it because I think we were going through like a pretty stressful time when we did this the first time. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, nothing happened, but nothing happened. That's a good thing. Like, we didn't go all woo woo and see things and go all Lucy in the sky with diamonds,
Mhm.
but I also didn't have anxiety like I normally do.
Right.
So nothing happened.
Mhm.
And then I started doing it more regularly. Irie put me on a schedule for it. And it was like, it's what doesn't happen to you that you notice at the end of the day,
Right.
right? And I
Yep.
think that's the big fear. Everyone I've spoken to about it is like, no, I can't. Like, I have to work, I have to drive, I have to do these things. I'm like, you are giving this way too much credit. Like,
100%. Yeah.
nothing is gonna
No.
happen. It's the absence of the things that don't happen that you want.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And yeah, similarly when I started, and again, I think I've shared this with you before, but I remember when my kids were at each other or doing something, and it was just a situation that normally at that time would have like sent me, through the roof. Like I would have been uber reactive to it,
Hmm.
and I wasn't. And I wasn't like not like it was the same situation, same everything. And I was still mad. Like I was still like knock it off. But I wasn't as like in my chest, in my like reactive, that like, you know, lighting that match kind of feeling like, oh, gonna
Ah,
lose it. It was just, hey. And I was just like, hey, guys, like, could you stop it? And they're like, okay. And I was like,
you're
okay,
like, what?
okay. Yeah, all right. I was like, I've been so reactive to things all the time where it was just like unnecessary. And that's where I feel like, again, over time, it made me a better mom. It made me a better partner. It made me, because I could get outside of my head, and not intentionally, I just had a little bit of a different perspective about things. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was just, it was like I said, it's very, very life changing.
Would you say it takes the edge off? Like, is that a fair way to put it? I don't know, because I'm not sure. Sometimes,
With higher dosages, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it definitely. Um, Again, it depends, I guess, people have different defines, I guess, of edge, right? Like, what's the edge? If you're already like when I was at the beginning suffering really badly with my anxiety, again, it was anxiety and depression. Depression I found lifted a lot quicker.
Mhm.
Anxiety took a little bit more time. Um, where I would
Yeah.
have days where I found that I was, because it's not a suppressant, right? Alcohol is a suppressant, cannabis is a suppressant. Like it's not like in those regards, like they suppress the feelings sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
more, right? Where psilocybin is going to bring thing, it's not going to intensify them, but it's not going to let you just cover things up and sweep them under the rug. It
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
going to make you more aware of how you're feeling, but it does also allow me to think about and almost like tackle them a little bit more. So the anxiety was still there, um, but I understood what it was now, and
Uh,
I could look at it almost as like a separate being
yep.
in some ways. Like this is, I have anxiety, but this is why, and I have this going on. Address it, and then I could move on from it faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I
that resulted in lasting change for me instead of just like, I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? I don't know. And am I am having a physical reaction to being anxious? I can't, in this like that loop, it just broke that loop for me.
Because like you said, right, you were creating new pathways. So when
Exactly.
you were able to sort of like remove yourself from the anxiety and look at it, and
Right.
I've read so much about anxiety because I have it really bad, worse so now, but kind of not saying I have anxiety and like it being who I am, like really
Right.
looking at it and going, I'm feeling anxious right now, like what's happening. But I feel like when you don't have the ability to do that, it just takes you right over. Like
For
I feel
sure. Like when
almost
you're in the like
suffocating.
eye of your storm, right? Like
Yep.
you can't see outside the eye of your storm. Like
Yeah,
that's, you're in there. And sometimes you need a something to help just like get you out of there so you can.
yeah. And I find too, like my doctor put me on SSRIs, and I just found like SSRIs would be like, so I started here and they were great. And then after a few months, I needed a little more because I was like adjusting to them. And then that
Right.
was great. And then I needed more and more and more. And then I was up to 300 milligrams or whatever
Mhm.
it was up. And I was like, what's the end result here? Am I going to end up at 2000 milligrams a day? Like, where does this end?
Right.
And I know my doctor is very against me using cannabis and psilocybin. And
Mhm.
like, I'm sure I'm her worst patient ever. But I'm like, I need you to take me off the SSRI, put me on like an antidepressant, and I'll wean off from there. But I would like to go plant-based. And of course, it's not highly recommended. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, because pharma can't monetize this yet.
Right.
But like doing that has been really successful for me. I wouldn't go back to an anti-anxiety. There are times, definitely, like there are days where I still have anxiety, but
Of
I had
course.
anxiety breaking through my SSRIs too, and I just didn't want to keep like I didn't want to be completely tasered. Like my sex life is gone because of the
Mhm.
SSRI I was on. And yeah, I know part of that's libido and menopause, but then I went back to my doctor and said, "Look, like my libido's been gone for a long time. I would really like it back." And she said, "Oh, well, I've got a medication I can put you on." And I
Right.
was still on my SSRI that complements the SSRI you're on. It will really help. It's been known to help. So I go to my pharmacy to pick it up. it's an antidepressant. It's
Right.
300 milligrams. I'd been weaning off my SSRI and was down to 50 milligrams, and then I got handed 300 milligrams of an antidepressant to go with my SSRI. And I was like, what in the holy hell is going on here? I just said,
Right.
like, is anyone listening? So, I need to get on a more like a better schedule with the microdosing. I've tried a few different things that you know, that I've that I like. Like I will say the difference for me with psilocybin microdosing and cannabis is that for me, cannabis strains all do exactly the same thing. They get me
Mhm.
stoned. I'm not
Mhm.
more creative in on one strain and want to clean the house on another and one focused on another. No, I'm just flat out on the couch stoned.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great for going to bed, and that is about it for me.
Right.
But when COVID happened, I was getting some psilocybin from the West Coast, and I was like, okay, well, this one's for focus and this one's for anxiety.
Mhm.
I'm calling BS, but I'll try them both. And I tried them both, and the focus one made me focus, but it
Mhm.
didn't really get rid of my anxiety. And the anxiety one did get rid of my anxiety, but it didn't feel hyper focused. Like it really did what it said it was
That
going
it was
to
gonna do.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it for me. I was like, okay, this works. And, so I would like play around with if I had a day that I knew I had to write a lot of stuff, whatever, I would take the focus one. And if I had a day where I was going to be interacting with like difficult people or whatever, I would take like the other one. And then there's a
Right.
happy one. And there's all the
Yeah.
things, right? So,
Yeah, a lot of those, again, I can't speak to what company that was, but a lot of them, again, like Mindful Meds or like I can name a few others, but they'll put the psilocybin with a blend of other functional mushrooms as
yeah.
well, right? And those are the ones that really help support and help achieve those different levels of what someone's trying to do, whether it's again, it's focus or whether it's, some of them are great pre-workouts, right? But not having
Yeah.
a caffeine or a taurine or something, you know, that's really heart palpitating. It's just it's just works much differently in your body. Um, or something like an ashwagandha if you're looking to for more of that chill and counteract the anxiety, the physical symptoms of anxiety. And so having those blends and using the other functional mushrooms and stuff get together as support, it's really incredible. Some of the things that again just these plants can do is amazing, especially to put
Absolutely.
them together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like I've had some with lion's mane, some with
Yeah.
ashwagandha. I wish they'd shorten
Mhm.
that word. I cannot say it.
Yeah.
Um,
It is a tough one.
but I really want to get us to our little treat, and it
Yeah.
is little reveal. Little reveal. What do we got there? Social spark. Want to tell
Yeah.
me about this little gem?
Yeah, so this one was, again, in kind of going on the theme of blends we were just talking about. Social Spark was designed to be, or utilized as primarily an alcohol replacement. So on those days where you don't want to have a coffee or a glass of wine, but you are going into like a social situation where you want to have that, you know, connectivity and you want to have that little bit of uplift. That's where social spark comes in. So it's 150 milligrams of psilocybin, which again, the microdose, like I said, very subs is 50. This is 150, still quite low, but it has a good blend um, of other supporting functionals in there that help achieve that same kind of um, similar to how you said it's kind of like that two glasses of wine kind of feeling from like a connectivity social aspect, but in contra the opposite of alcohol, you're actually doing something really great for your body. You will not have a hangover the next day, right? Like
Yeah. Like you
there's
could just drink it with like a soda water or something, right?
exactly, yeah, like, I find for me, like, we went to a concert last Thursday, and I had to be somewhere at 8:45 in the morning the next day. I knew we weren't gonna get home because it was in the city, so I wasn't gonna be home till, like, 1 AM. So I was like, "I can't drink," like and I still had to get that's why I had to be out the door at 8:45, so I still had to be up by 7. I was like and I'm not good with not a lot of sleep. So, and I'm prioritizing my sleep has become, like, one of my top things, like I will do anything to protect my 8 hours of sleep these days.
Good.
But so instead, again, we went to this concert. we went for dinner before and I had a glass of wine with dinner, and then I had a social spark, and then I just had water for the rest of the night. And I was having a great time, super happy, still in the vibe of everyone else. But I came home, went to bed, and woke up feeling great.
Right. Okay,
Where
so how long does it take for the feeling? I know it'll be different for everybody, but
it
I'm
will
just
be.
curious. Like,
Yeah.
how long for you does it take? And can you feel it kicking in?
I can, like, I do. Again, it's not that I'm feeling it because visually things are different or anything like that, but you feel the uplift, you can feel a little bit more, maybe a little more energized, a little bit more spark. I didn't even mean to say that, but a little bit more of a spark, within, like, an hour or so.
Okay.
But again, it depends. It's the same as having a glass of wine on an empty stomach or anything else on an empty, right? Like, you're gonna
Ah,
metabolize differently. So,
right.
I always recommend eating beforehand to make sure there's just a base in your body because your body needs nutrients.
Hmm.
And then before mushrooms always.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
how long do you think it lasts for?
So a good couple hours, you'll
Oh,
feel the
okay.
effects. Yeah. Yeah, and again, depending situationally and what kind of time frame someone's working on,
Yeah.
like, it's not a high enough dose, or like you can also take another one later on should you choose. You could take two at the same time. Will you feel that? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, you will feel it, but
Yeah. It's 300 grams.
again, still not in a way where you're in a point where you'd see any visuals or anything like that. You would just feel it, right?
Yeah. You probably
Um,
wouldn't drive on it though, right?
no. No, I wouldn't. It's same as recommendation. Everybody with, like, cannabis gummy or a couple
Yeah.
glasses
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
wine, don't drive, right? Like, that's
Please don't drive on this.
just don't drive. Um, but yeah, a couple of the only thing that I will say is because I find them for me, I find all psilocybin fairly energizing. So I would take it usually sooner than later,
Okay.
because it can affect my sleep, just only based on I'm generally, like, having a good time, and my thoughts are just kind of with me a little bit longer, but not in a bad way or an anxious way. I just find
Yeah.
I'm not generally tired.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
So
I
yeah.
always try to earlier is better
Yep.
for
Okay.
me.
That makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. What a great sort of alternative. But also because it is psilocybin,
Mhm.
and you're doing it, say, in a social setting. Say one night you're out with your girlfriends, night you normally enjoy a glass of wine. So
Mhm.
you maybe have that one glass of wine and nurse it or whatever, but take your
Right.
social spark. You're kind of rewiring your brain to say, in this environment, I don't always have to be drinking. Like I can
Exactly.
enjoy
Yep.
this. Like,
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. It does add and reinforce that if that's a habit or a behavior that you'd like to kind of change or association. For sure. Yeah, and again, for me, I don't, because I do enjoy the way it makes me feel, that I still will have usually a drink, but I do stop there because I'm like, I don't wanna ruin this feeling. Like, I don't want now the
ah,
alcohol to take over because, like, this is a
so
way
great.
better vibe and a way better feeling than alcohol gives me. So I don't wanna ruin it. That's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. No, and it's kind of like apples and oranges. They're two totally different experiences. Why would you want to, and you're never going to know what you get off of having a social spark if you're drinking, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, like, having an authentic experience, I think, is really important, especially if it's the first time with someone trying something like that. Like, I have
Yeah.
had friends who have been, they've been over and been having, they've already had quite a few, and they're like, "Oh, I'll have one." I was like, "Well, it's kind of a waste, guys."
Yeah,
Like,
it is a
it is a
waste.
bit of a waste, like,
Yeah.
it's
One or
they're
the other. Pick a lane.
yeah, just pick a lane, especially again if it's their first time ever trying Social Spark specifically, or any of the other ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'd rather role model that to my daughter, not, hey, mommy's on shrooms, but you know, having that like nice feeling, but enjoying like just a regular, San Pellegrino water soda, whatever, right? And
Right.
having her see that I'm having fun without a cocktail. Like, I think one of
Exactly.
the things we all sort of forget is how normalized we have made drinking wine or alcohol in front of our kids. And then what are they going to think when they grow up? This is how we unwind. This is how we deal with stress. This is the
Yep.
crutch we use when we have a hard time or friends over.
This is
Like,
what we do when we're happy. This is what we do when we're sad. This is what we do,
yeah,
right?
this is
Yeah.
what we do.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God, Laura, that is this is a really illuminating conversation because I'm not, like I said, I'm not a non-alcoholic wine lover. I just
Mhm,
have yet to find one.
mhm.
I'm not even gonna pretend to lie. I love that feeling of a little elevation. It just kind of takes me out of the headspace I've been in, if it's been a bad week or day or whatever. I am not a saint. I like a little bit of mental relief.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
I get it.
really love that there's something out there for us to try that gives us that sort of connectivity, like you said. Like, I don't want to say I don't want to go out with the girls because everyone's gonna be drinking. I'm gonna find it too tempting. I don't want that to be the thing for me. I want it to be like, all right, well, I'll just take a social spark because I just love hanging out with everybody.
Right, exactly.
Plus, you bring your camera, your phone, and you get to record everybody else being wasted, right? And then you're like, I'm holier than thou.
Yeah, so yeah.
I'm the
Well,
one judging.
right? Yeah, I mean, just the feeling of honestly, like, not waking up hungover
Yeah,
after,
like
like, a really fun, good night is just
yeah,
it's so lovely. Like,
exactly. Like
it's
I
so
haven't,
lovely that it's a almost that, like, you can have your cake and eat it too kinda thing, right? Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, you can still go out and be social and have fun and have a drink.
yeah,
Right? And
yeah,
then
exactly.
and be out late and go to the concerts and do the thing, but you don't have to, be punished for it the next day or have that anxiety and guilt and all the grossness that goes along with it and have a really still productive day the next day. And that feels again really, really lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Laura,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me. And I would like to
Problem. Thank you for
ask you
having me.
to come again and so we can talk a little more about microdosing and
I'd love
more
to.
on the science behind that, but also like how microdosing works, dosing and the different options and what they do.
For
But
sure.
that
I'd
will
love
be
to.
a different episode. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm going
No
to
problem.
include information on some of the things you've talked about today. Definitely like a link to your site if anyone wants to try Social Spark. And I know you've got a lot of great information to share, so I'll definitely share all your contact info.